So today I want to talk about film photography and why I decided to pick up a camera that's nearly 40 years old and start shooting with this thing over my digital camera. So since the start of the pandemic, we've all been spending so much time inside, and I don't know about you guys, but for me, that has meant watching a lot more YouTube, finding new sides of the YouTube community, new creators. And one niche I found that has really inspired me this past year is that of film photography. I really knew nothing about film at the time, but I was so inspired by these photographers who were going out and capturing these great photos on cameras that were older than me. But before I go into my experience with getting started with film, I want to touch on a few reasons why someone may put down their digital camera and pick up a film camera these days. So why shoot film? It's 2021. Every major camera brand is coming out with full frame beasts every quarter that have all the bells and whistles on them. They can do photo and video all in one, flip out touch screens, faster and faster shutters. They have sensors with more and more megapixels on them. So why trade that for a camera that's anywhere from 20 to 40 years old or beyond? For me, it comes down to two reasons. First, I feel like digital photography is kind of going through a phase of it's kind of over the top in some regards. With digital photography and social media, it sometimes feels like it's less about the photo you can go out and take and more about what you do with that photo when you come home and edit it and Photoshop it to where it almost feels like an artificial image. This leads me right to my second point, which is that film can bring intention and purpose back to your photography. Each photo is literally costing you money every time you snap the frame. When you feel that expense hit your wallet every time you buy a roll of film, develop it, and scan it, it really forces your brain to slow down and think about the photos you're shooting. And if there's anything I learned going through this last year of the pandemic, it's just how good it can feel to slow down and be more present in the moment. And shooting film can help you do exactly this when it comes to your photography. Now, let's talk about how I got started shooting film and my experience with it thus far. After watching a lot of other film photographers on YouTube and consulting with friends and family who were into shooting film, I kept my eye on Craigslist and Facebook ads. It didn't take long before I found a post of someone saying that they were going through their relative's house and they came across a huge vintage camera collection and were wanting to sell them. So I reached out to someone who had a post like this, and before I knew it, I was standing in this house that had a huge camera collection. I mean, there were boxes from the floor to the ceiling and every type of film camera you can think of, from 35 millimeters, medium formats, SLRs, TLRs, old Super 8 cameras. It was a lot. And as a beginner, I tried my best to go through and test different cameras and see which one was working or not. But following good advice from friends, I walked out of there with just a 35 millimeter SLR, the Nikon FM2. And while I definitely want to get into medium format eventually, I know as a beginner with the costs involved with film that having 36 shots on each roll will help me so much in the beginning compared to just getting 10 or 12 shots out of a roll. When you think about the cost to buy a roll, develop it, and scan it, and you're just getting started in the hobby, I think it's a great idea to start with 35 millimeter so that you're getting 3 times as many shots each time you go out to shoot compared to shooting medium format right away. So none of the cameras were certified that they were in working order, but it looked like they were pretty well taken care of, so I got a pretty good deal on it and knew I was accepting some risk that there might be light leaks or some other problem. So after I got the film camera, I immediately went down to my local camera store and bought a couple rolls of film to try to put through right away and see if there was any problems with it. The only film stocks that the camera store had in stock was some Fuji C200 and a black and white 100 speed, so I picked up those two. But I went out and shot the whole roll of Fuji C200 right away and dropped it back off to get developed that same day. The film photography gods must have been looking out for me that day as we got back to the Trailhead parking lot, and there waiting for me was a vintage VW Beetle. So you know I had to shoot it. And when I got the scans back, I was super happy to see that there were no light leaks and I had 36 full photos exposed correctly and the camera was working. But the scans that I got back weren't quite what I was hoping for. The files were all really small files and they had lots and lots of contrast and saturation already in them. They looked like the kind you'd get from dropping them off at a drugstore or Walmart or a cheap processor. I had to try and pull this back in Lightroom and notice that the scans themselves even had digital issues in processing that were showing up kind of glitchy. Some of the scans had these weird inclusions in them that I think is a product of a cheaper low-res scan. But that's the beauty of film. I still have the negative, and if I want to, I can try to rescan them to try to get a higher detail scan down the road. Next up was the roll of Ilford Delta 100. This film stock gave me 24 exposures to shoot, and I was excited to use this film to document some scenes from my hometown and places that were sentimental to me. Coming from digital, I never really thought to shoot black and white before, but some of my favorite images actually came out of this roll. I really love this series from my childhood neighborhood park. This was an area that I have a lot of memories from growing up, and it was cool to capture in a way that gave it some cinematic feeling. This shot right here of Ellen just might be my favorite from the roll. It's a very simple composition, but I really like how her shadow is framed in this crop. Alright, that's going to do it for this video, guys. I hope you enjoyed this look at how I'm getting started with film photography. If you have any questions about film or how to get started, please leave me a comment down below. I would love to share anything I've learned thus far. Since those first two rolls, I've gotten up to shoot a lot more with this camera, and I'm excited to share a lot more work with you guys soon. So I'll see you on the next one. Peace.